welcome to Tea with Mike, episode number 34. Our tea fact of the day is tea was so valuable in the 18th century that it was kept in a locked chest. Today, this is now known as a tea caddy, and that comes from BuzzFeed.com. So today on the show, we have Trent. Thanks for joining me today, man.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And as you know, so what tea are you drinking today on this chilly winter's day?
Well, my wife made it for me because she's the tea expert. So it's a spiced tea, like a masala chai. So it's going great with this kind of weather.
So how many different types of tea would you say you drink? Do you have a favorite like me? Just good
if I were to order mine, like if I were to go out, I'd probably pick an Earl Grey. But I have an affinity for the spiced teas. Like a lot of the Somali restaurants in the Edmonton area have a variant of masala chai that's really good. And like it's you'd be surprised. Every culture has their own kind of tea or their own spin on it, and like there's many out there that are just they blow your mind.
So that pops an interesting question right off the bat. So if you were going to go out for like a good cup of tea or even coffee for that matter, would you prefer to pick smaller coffee shops than big brands?
Yeah, I would much prefer small businesses. I'm not a big fan of chains just because, it's all the more fun when you get to support like a local Albertan or Edmontonian business. There's a lot of cool little tea stores that you're seeing now. Sadly, one closed. It was called Tea Girl. It was like downtown, and they had like a wall of tea that you could select from. And those are kind of the ones where it's kind of like a diamond in the rough. Like you wouldn't necessarily look at that restaurant or that business and say, hey, I want to go there. But then when you go in, you're just like, whoa, like I don't know. It's fun to explore.
Oh, and while we're on the topic of exploring, considering I just moved to Edmonton permanently, what are some like tea shops that I should check out, or small local coffee shops that's there?
Well, it's really up to how far you want to drive because Edmonton's a very spread out city.
Yes.
It's one of those things that the transit can be difficult to navigate at times, and if you have a car or whether you're relying on the LRT, it depends. So, like, which side are you on?
Northwest.
Northwest. So then you can go down the downtown area, Stony Plain, and you can kind of just explore. Like there's a lot of little places to go. There's some stuff on the south side that's neat. Like there's a little artisan and tea bakery place. It has a French name that's escaping me, but it's in the Millwoods area. And they're really neat because it's kind of like you can have the high tea experience. And then there's a Russian place downtown that's neat. So like there's a lot of places that you could just kind of walk around and you'll find one, like Stony Plain Road or going the downtown area or going to White Avenue. Like you're gonna find a place one way or another.
Awesome. So I'll just get out there and start exploring, and I'll let you know what I discover.
It'll convince you to get moving in the cold months.
I need to move because my joints are chilly today. Anyway, so let's dive into. Do you just want to give a general overview of some of the cool things you've done both in the past and the present?
Okay.
From working from the government to the MOA project. Is that right?
Yeah. So I started out, early in my career. Like I was doing a sociology degree at the U of A, and I'd heard so many times that if you're getting a Bachelor of Arts or you're going with political sciences of some kind, social sciences, humanitarian type of stuff, people are like, oh, you're going to get a job in McDonald's, Like they're just like, you can't get a job with this degree. But it's not true, It's just North American culture is based off of not so much what you know, but who you know. And, you can get really a job with any degree. So I had an interest right off the get-go in legal stuff. And I'd done an internship in North Carolina with the Superior Court. So then from there, I went into the bail hearing office in Edmonton, where we got to work with first appearances for criminal offenses. And it was a really good and eye-opening experience. And for me, it was also it kind of taught me other things, like about how there's a lot of data and research on the bail hearing system and how it's racialized, like about how, you look at the docket and you can tell, hey, okay, so there's a overrepresentation of this demographic, and this demographic, but why, right? It's because some certain neighborhoods are over policed, and then certain ethnographic or certain demographics are less likely to have time with a lawyer or to navigate the bail hearing process successfully. So that kind of helped kind of push me into working more within the racial justice side of things and advocacy work. So I've been doing a lot of advocacy work, and I've worked with different political organizations. I've been on political campaigns, and like I'm currently now on the board for the Alberta Muslim Public Affairs Council as the vice president of programming, and I'm working with a lot of other not-for-profits in whether it's a volunteer capacity or just, throwing a few pieces of input here and there, because the end goal, I think, for everyone should be to have a more equitable society. And it affects, whether it's something like criminal justice or, access to education. So that's kind of what put me on the current path, I guess. It's just a very long-winded journey of trying to find what exactly I love to do, and what I love to do is helping other people,
And so so in your bio you talked about how you've worked with the homeless population.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into that a little bit, and then also kind of dive into the path of what it's taught you and what other people should know as more like general education knowledge about different underrepresented populations in the community?
So after my role in the former provincial government ended post-election, I was kind of looking for a new home, like for employment-wise, and one of the applications I sent in was picked up by the Housing First program in Edmonton, and I got a job there, and it was somewhat new to me, but I knew a lot about how policy and legislation functioned, and a lot about how the different ministries and MLAs function in Alberta. So that's kind of the knowledge I kind of pitched myself, like I can help you in this area, because I'm not sure if you have someone like that, but I'd be happy to lend my strength to your team. And so I became a follow-up support worker with the Housing First program, and it's managing a caseload of 20 people that are transitioning out of homelessness. They've been housed in market housing, and then they get 1 year of external supports and referrals to other organizations, including addictions, should they choose to access that kind of help. But it's really eye-opening, because people like to say, oh, it's a black and white issue. If you're homeless, it's your fault. Like they like to make it a really partisan or awful kind of issue, but it's not. It's a very nonpartisan issue. It's all about human rights. It's all about access to resources. And a lot of these people come from backgrounds that have to do with mental illness, abuse, and often, it's very racialized. And it's part of that overrepresentation problem that I mentioned. It's certain demographics pop up, and that the reasoning goes all the way back to colonialism, to some of them, right? When you're experiencing intergenerational trauma, then your access to resources is going to be limited. And that's one of the big problems we find. And it's really eye-opening, because you have to learn about addiction and how it's different, Like I said, our socially acceptable addictions, and then there's some that are less so. And that means we need to be changing the way we view addiction as a society in order to get people the appropriate help and access to the right resources. So that's kind of the piece for that, I guess.
On a personal level, are you still working with the homeless?
Currently, yes. That's still my current role. I obviously have a lot of side projects, but that's my job, to work with homeless people. So it's both a passion, and it's also, it's my day to day. And as the weather gets colder, it becomes a lot more crucial to get these resources to the right people. Right? We had a tent city in Edmonton over by Little Italy, and the city demolished that recently. So it's one of those things that, it is a real problem, and it's right out there.
Obviously, we don't have exact data, but do you have any like rough data on like sort of how many people have just fallen on hard times and need the help versus kind of how many people still need the help, so all those sorts of.
I don't have the exact numbers, but honestly, we have a housing crisis in Edmonton and a housing crisis in Alberta because we don't have enough affordable housing and we don't have enough resources. And when, there's all these debates around government budgets and stuff like that, I feel like regardless of who's in power, these are the people that get ignored. And that's something that as a society we need to be giving attention to. And it's, like I said, it's one of those issues, it's nonpartisan, it's about human rights. But the numbers are staggering. I don't have any off the top of my head.
So that's fine. So because you've done a lot of different things over like a period of time. What are some of the things you enjoy most about all the different types of things you've done?
I enjoy learning about people. It's very easy to think that you know people or to learn via technology, YouTube videos and stuff like that. It's another to get out of your element. Like, I helped build houses at Alexis Nakota Sioux First Nation as like a kind of like a part-time job thing. And I also worked with them when I was in government, that same group. And then I've seen a lot of different groups that are experiencing different types of discrimination. And what makes me feel really happy and hopeful is the fact that a lot of these groups are starting to become more organized and they're starting to learn about how to interact with each other and build those bridges, because a lot of these problems that groups experience are the same problem affecting two different groups and they just don't communicate. So then when they start communicating, they're like, hey, me too. and then it becomes really beautiful too, because like there's so much history in Canada about different groups coming here. Like my family came one side Irish, one side Italian, and my boys, I have two little boys. They're half Pakistani and then half whatever I am. So it's like they're like my Italian family doesn't speak Italian because of when they came here, they were the discriminated group, and I don't want my boys to experience that. So it's really hopeful to me to see all the social work, like the social justice type work and just this interaction between peoples that come from completely different backgrounds, whether it be sitting down and having tea with someone or coming up with a strategy to target a specific policy that isn't quite fair. And it can be a really simple thing about whether or not your opinion on Bill 21, like whether or not government officials have the authority to determine what we wear, which unless it's offensive they shouldn't be able to. But it is quite the discourse right now. So, to me, it's so empowering to see that these groups are really becoming more organized and working together and building bridges that people would have never thought possible 20 years ago.
Also, and because a lot of people out there, including myself, like I worked in security, so I experienced back in Red Deer, so I experienced the tip of these people that unfortunately have mental health problems and homelessness and so on and so forth, and some of the struggles. And what I definitely learned, even though I had a job to do, was that talking to them as two human beings was a lot more effective than being forceful, because you really get to know a little bit about their stories, and it really hit home how some people have just had a lot of bad luck and circumstances, and the resources haven't been there to help them at an early stage, and then they've slipped so far down the path that it's hard for them to come back.
Yeah, there's a really good TED Talk that talks about addiction, and it said that we think that the opposite of addiction is sobriety, but the opposite of addiction is actually connection. Like a social connection, like a social network, like people that are isolated and alone obviously are dealing with mental and physical pain a different way. And often when they can't access the right kind of help, then they self-medicate with sometimes substances that could be considered harmful, right? Like, whereas, some people might self-medicate with 10 cups of coffee a day, others might choose something else. Right? So it's one of those things that it's just realizing that we all really have an addiction. It's just some are socially acceptable and some are not. because I have a coffee problem and I'm not afraid to admit it. But
And I have
it's
a
one
tea
of those
problem.
things.
I'm only on my seventh cup of tea today.
Well, see, for me, tea is the relaxing beverage. Coffee is like get me amped up, and then tea is like I can relax.
So what are some ways that like people like can help? What projects can they get involved with, or where even if they don't necessarily have the time, where can they go to just like educate themselves a little bit more so they become more thoughtful in the debates and the opinions they're giving because they have a little bit more background knowledge?
Well, there's a lot of really good organizations out there, like the Homeward Trust and Housing First program in Edmonton is doing fantastic work at getting people, housing. Like when you get housing, then you can work on all those other problems. But when people are on the street, like it's hard to focus on treating the small problems when you're fighting for your life. And then there's a lot of other organizations. I really like this group called Moms Stop the Harm. I absolutely love them. They're wonderful people. I have their badge right here. It's like I support SCS in Alberta. That's safe consumption sites, or rather supervised consumption sites. I've seen them at many events, and they speak up from the lens and the perspective of parents, specifically mothers, who have lost children to the opioid crisis. And it's very humbling to realize how preventable these problems are. Whether or not it starts at a pharmaceutical level or it starts because somebody has mental and physical pain, right? Like you get prescribed a painkiller after a car crash, or you get prescribed something, or maybe you're not getting the right kind of mental health support, so you take something to help that pain go away, but then it becomes a problem, or then you take something that has fentanyl in it and then you become a statistic. So there's a lot of organizations out there, and I think we really need to shift the discourse away from left versus right and view it as a nonpartisan problem, that this is a problem affecting everybody. It doesn't matter which level of society you come from, doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, what religion you have. This is a problem that's affecting everybody, and it's becoming beyond a problem. It is a crisis. So things like that, and there's a lot of good work from organizations like Assist. That's the center, like the Canadian Mental Health Center. They do the Assist program, which is it's essentially first aid for suicide, and that's a really good program as well for just shifting perspectives. Like instead of saying commit suicide, which makes it seem like a criminal act, you talk about it a little bit differently, you phrase it a little bit differently, and we all encounter that kind of thing in our personal lives as well as our jobs. So there's a lot of different organizations doing good work, and the city of Edmonton, I feel, has done quite a good job at connecting those organizations together.
Oh, to work as kind of like one big team tackling the same problem?
To an extent. Like there's definitely more work that can be done, but the city of Edmonton helps fund some of the programs, and they've offered like subsidized programs for support workers and all kinds of stuff like that, and it's always great to see that.
Awesome. So we'll go back the other way a little bit. So because you worked in environments that a lot of people would be considered kind of like very stressful and stuff, what are some of the things you do like in your personal life outside of all these crazy projects that you get up to
Selfcare. Selfcare. Well, I'm an avid comic book collector. I've got like Batman all around the room in here. Cool. And I'm still playing Skyrim. Came out in 2011. I just have a modded Skyrim, so I just take that time, and I like to read, and I've been playing with poetry a little bit, so just little things to kind of be creative and to do something that I can get my mind off of it, right? Like because when you see the crappy parts of society, or you see tragedy, you need to have a healthy way to cope with all of that. And sometimes it's simple, like I got a $50 Batman costume for my kid off Amazon. So it's just like a funny little costume, but he put it on the other day, and it just like that made my day. It was like my whole week was just like hilarious after that. So it's just like the little things, like spending time with family, or just having that kind of kickback. It's just like yourself, I'm sure, like your tea is also very relaxing, and working on the project that you're doing, it probably brings you a good deal of comfort Like it can be busy, but it's also refreshing, to work on a project that gives you joy.
And also that human element
Yeah.
to a degree, right? Actually, because it's crazy how fast you could lose your people skills if you shut yourself down or you just stay in one place and you don't go out there and like actively meet people.
Yeah. Well, it's very easy, and it's also like I feel like once you kind of leave the academic world, whether it be primary school, secondary school, you're kind of like, how the hell do I meet people?
Yeah, because we're all there, and then it's like,
Yeah. It's got kind of like after that, it's like your primary social sphere is like your work, right? Like, hey, my coworker that I'm friends with at work, and then I never see after work. But like it's just you have to really put some time out there to put yourself out there and talk to people because social interaction, like there's a reason why they call humans a political animal, right? Like we need that social interaction, like we need that face-to-face interaction or we go crazy, and even if you're an introvert.
Yes, that's a good point because it's definitely like declined. I can think of a lot of people that just shut themselves in a
Yeah.
space every single day.
But even when you're shutting yourself down, I feel like a lot of people, they're still reading a book or they're playing a video game or they're watching a movie about other people's interactions, because the social sphere and that kind of those drama, it's a fundamental part of our psyche, to watch other people interacting or to be part of the interaction. Sometimes it's about learning how to interact at all. It's just it's so fundamental, and people undervalue that. And I feel the less connected you are to other people, you're putting yourself into a position where you're kind of at a disadvantage, And I've been there, when you, especially, the Albertan weather and the dark, it puts you in a place where you just want to wrap up in a blanket and just watch Netflix all day. But you gotta get past that in one way or another. And seasonal depressive disorder is a real thing. So we have a lot of barriers here, but we also have a lot of positive things too because there's always something going on.
Especially in a city like Edmonton, I'm super excited to be back. I'm really like gonna be getting reconnecting and getting back into this really strong performing arts theater scene here.
Well, they call it the festival city, and there's a reason for that. And you got Folk Fest, you got so many fun things in Edmonton to look forward to.
Yeah, so because I've been here, so in the past I did a bunch of acting and professional technical theater, and I took the theater and entertainment production at Red Deer College, the program. So
Good
yeah,
for you.
I'm just excited to like get back involved and start having some fun again. And the Fringe is just crazy cool.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Like, there's hundreds and hundreds of festivals that happen in Edmonton, and it ranges from like literally performing arts festivals to the really small cultural ones or really obscure ones. And it's always wonderful to just explore Edmonton, I find.
And the best part I think about all of the festivals in Edmonton is the diversity and the different types of festivals, from like the Caribbean to the Fringe to you name it. But also 90% of them are super affordable, which is cool too, right? Because that's not the same in every city.
Yeah, and like there's some also really cool things too. Like this past Heritage Days was the first time that the Palestinian community had their own pavilion, and they won a first place award for performing a cultural dance. And like it's stuff like that, like that's really beautiful about Edmonton is just like we are this very diverse network of different peoples that celebrate being Albertan or Canadian or Edmontonian in different ways, whether it be complaining about the cold or just having a good time in the summer. It's wonderful. I really like Edmonton. I really do.
And then as we move towards the kind of the end of the episode, what's in the pipeline for the rest of 2019 and then into the new decade of 2020?
Well, gonna be figuring out what's next for me in academia, and because I don't think I'm quite done. I think I have more that I want to do, and I'm really passionate about creating some more positivity projects that break down those intersectional barriers of discrimination. So I'm coming up with some ideas for a video project, and we'll see how that goes. And been kind of toying with the idea of getting into writing more like professionally, but we'll see.
Oh, professional.
Yeah, but it's like one thing I feel like the more projects you come up with, you got to narrow it down because you can half-ass two things or you can whole-ass one thing, right?
Yeah.
So it comes to that, like, what can you handle? So I'm excited to see where I go next, but I'm quite happy with the work I'm doing now, but there's always something new.
And to kind of like put the full wrap on the episode, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to people that you've just learned? It can be absolutely anything.
Um, I think that it's never too late to improve or to change your worldview. I think it's never too late to come up with new and innovative ideas to better yourself or your community. Like, you could be somebody who's 50 years old, you could be 19, you could be at any stage of your life. You could be someone much younger or much older, but you can benefit your community and those around you. You just have to come up with an idea about what you truly enjoy, and it'll take root. And anything's possible. I mean, look at you. You started a project from scratch, and now you have over 1,000 different viewers. Like, anybody can create something beautiful. You just have to give yourself that time and yourself that own internal confidence. You have to believe in yourself first, I think.
That's true. You got to do it for the love and not whatever else might come in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, people will offer all kinds of opinions. That doesn't mean that you need them. You just have to say, I want to do this, right?
So let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, Trent. Thank you so much for being on Tea with Mike, episode 34. We'll definitely connect, get to know each other a little better, so I can learn some more things and improve my awareness on the different underrepresented people in the community. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me if you want to go for tea in Edmonton.
Let's do it, man.
All right.
I love tea.
Okay, you take care now, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.